I used to think silence in a family meant peace, until I learned it could also mean exile. My name is Ava Reynolds, 33 years old, born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I work as a vice president of product development at a tech company downtown. People call me reliable, consistent, the kind of woman who never misses a deadline. But that morning, reliability felt like a curse. It was 7:42 a.m., a gray Seattle Tuesday. Rain tapped the bus window as I scrolled through my phone, half awake, latte in hand. Then I saw it. The Reynolds family Thanksgiving group chat. The familiar blue bubble from my mother glowed on my screen. "Hi, everyone. This year, we've decided to keep Thanksgiving intimate, just immediate family who really need our support right now." Hold for a second, I didn't understand. Then my stomach dropped. Immediate family. Who need our support? I stared at the words until they blurred. Beneath the message, I watched the dots appear and vanish: my father's thumbs-up emoji, my sister Lila's heart, even my Aunt Patricia's polite "sounds lovely." One by one, every relative acknowledged it, except my Aunt Elaine. She replied, "Grace, are you sure you want to say that here?" The chat went dead. No one dared respond. The bus jolted forward, but it was my heart that stumbled. My mother hadn't called. She hadn't texted me privately. She'd just announced to our entire family that I was no longer invited, disguised as diplomacy. A man beside me coughed, pulling me back to reality. I locked my phone, pressed it to my chest, and whispered a shaky laugh, the kind that hides a wound too deep for words. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I'd spent my whole life earning a seat at a table that never truly had a place for me, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop begging for one. Before I tell you what I did next, do me a favor: hit like, subscribe, and share this if you've ever felt like the reliable one who somehow ends up left out. Because this story, it's for every woman who's ever been told she's too strong to need love. I took a deep breath, opened my phone again, and read the message one last time. Then I typed nothing. No defense. No reply. Just a quiet decision forming behind my calm expression to build my own table. By the time I reached the 17th floor, I'd already rehearsed 10 versions of what I should text back to my mother and deleted them all. The glass doors of Nexus Dynamics slid open with that sterile hiss I used to love. Inside, the office buzzed with polite efficiency, keyboards clacking, espresso machines sighing, the smell of ambition disguised as burnt coffee. My badge beeped, my smile automatic. "Morning, boss," my assistant Jade said, handing me a fresh cup. "Congrats again on that stock jump. The board must be thrilled." "Yeah," I managed. "Thrilled." I sat behind my desk overlooking downtown Seattle. The rain had turned into mist, soft enough to blur the skyline. I opened my laptop, intending to check project updates, but the screen lit up with the same family chat I'd tried to escape. The message sat there like a stain that refused to fade. For years, I'd buried resentment under professionalism. Deadlines were my therapy, success my armor. But that morning, I felt something sharper: clarity. I closed the laptop slowly, as if sealing a chapter. My reflection in the black screen stared back, hair neat, blazer pressed, expression calm. Too calm. Jade peeked in. "You okay, Ava?" "I'm fine," I said, steady but colder than I meant to. "Actually, I'm better than fine." When she left, I opened my notebook, the one I used for product strategies. On a clean page, I wrote 6 words in crisp blue ink. "Maybe it's time to stop begging." The pen paused. Then, beneath it, almost without thinking, I added another line: "Build my own table." And just like that, the plan began. That night, Seattle was a blur of headlights and drizzle. I stood by the window of my apartment, city lights shimmering across the wet glass. My phone buzzed with notifications from work launch reports, meeting reminders. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that group chat and the 6 words that had sliced something open inside me. I'd spent my whole life being the reliable one, the steady hand everyone leaned on. Maybe it was time to lean on myself. So, I did what I do best, made a plan. On my kitchen counter lay the blue folder I'd been keeping for months, Provence property. Personal purchase. It wasn't a fantasy. It was real. The deal had closed weeks ago, quietly. I'd been waiting for the right moment to share it. And now, apparently, I had one. I set up my tripod by the window. Outside, the rain shimmered like static, but in my mind, I was already under a French sun. I hit record. The camera opened on my face, no makeup, hair pulled back, eyes steady. "You know how some people ask for space?" I said softly, my voice calm but edged. I took that literally. The next clips came together like muscle memory. Footage from the closing day in France, my hand signing Ava Reynolds, owner, sunlight cutting across a stone terrace in Provence, a vineyard rolling toward the horizon, the brass key turning in an ancient door. I layered it with one line of text. Space? Accepted. I'll take the continent. See you in France. When I posted the video, I didn't tag anyone. No names, no locations. Just the caption and a quiet smirk that said enough. Minutes later, the view count started climbing, friends from work commenting fire emojis, college acquaintances leaving queen energy, and iconic. Then, a notification that made my stomach twist. Lila Reynolds commented, "Mom's really upset." "You didn't have to make it public, Ava." I stared at her comment for a long time before replying, "Then maybe Mom shouldn't have." I locked my phone and exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt light, not cruel, not petty, just free. The rain outside eased into silence, and I whispered to the empty room, half to myself, half to whoever might be listening. "I'm done asking for a seat. Next Thanksgiving, I'm setting my own table." And with that, the camera stopped recording, but my story had only just begun. I woke up the next morning to the glow of my phone lighting up the nightstand. For a second, I thought it was a work emergency. Then I saw it, over 200 notifications. My reel had exploded overnight. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments, but it wasn't the strangers that caught my breath. It was the names I actually knew. The first message was from Noah, my cousin in Chicago. "So, you dropped a cinematic bomb at 2 a.m. Are you okay, or are we finally proud relatives of a viral legend?" I couldn't help but smile. Then another ping Sienna, his sister, the one who always called things as they were. "Provence? You've been holding out on us. Send details. I'll bring wine and an apology for our entire family." Her message was followed by a voice note from Aunt Elaine. "Ava, my darling, I just saw your video." Bold, beautiful, terrifying perhaps, but entirely deserved. I hope you realize how proud I am of you for standing tall, even if you did it through social media theatrics. I replayed her voice twice. It didn't sound like pity. It sounded like respect. That day, my inbox became a lifeline. College friends, old colleagues, even my former manager sent private DMs saying the same thing. You did what we all wish we could do. For the first time, I felt seen. Not because I succeeded, but because I'd finally stopped hiding behind politeness. By noon, I had a new group chat blinking on my screen. Thanksgiving 2.0, France. Noah had started it. Sienna added half the family. Aunt Elaine renamed it New Table, New Rules. And just like that, the empty space my parents created began filling up with something far stronger support. Once the laughter from our new group chat faded, reality hit me. Hosting Thanksgiving in France wasn't just poetic, it was logistical warfare. I sat at my kitchen table in Seattle that night, laptop open, notebook ready, sleeves rolled up. The rain outside drummed against the glass, matching the rhythm of my pen as I started a list titled Operation New Table. First flights. I checked time zones and layovers until my eyes blurred. Seattle to Paris, Paris to Marseille, then a 2-hour drive to Provence. I sent everyone the itinerary, color-coded and painfully precise. Noah replied first. You were born for this level of control. I sent him a winking emoji and booked my own ticket departure in 10 days. Next, I called Camille Dupont, the French property manager I'd worked with during the villa purchase. Her accent alone made everything sound possible. Of course, Madame Reynolds, she said. We can prepare the guest rooms, extra linens, a long farmhouse table. Oui? You want traditional American Thanksgiving? With a French twist? Exactly, I said, smiling for the first time that day. Over the next few days, my life became a montage of planning. Zoom calls with Camille about rental vans and catering supplies, emails confirming grocery deliveries from local markets, a 2 a.m. video chat with Sienna debating whether to serve wine before or during dinner. Both, we decided. Through it all, I kept my phone on silent. No calls from my parents, no texts from Lila. The quiet was loud but strangely peaceful. On the 10th morning, I zipped my suitcase shut. The familiar skyline outside my window looked smaller than ever. I whispered to it like an old friend, "Thank you for keeping me safe this long." Then I grabbed my passport, opened the door, and stepped out. Not away from something, but toward the life I was finally choosing. The first thing I noticed when I stepped out of Marseille Airport was the light golden, diffused, nothing like Seattle's blue-gray haze. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and rain-soaked earth. It was the kind of scent that felt like a welcome. The drive to Provence took less than 2 hours. The highway unfurled into rolling hills, then narrowed into winding village roads lined with olive trees and stone cottages. My rental car hummed beneath me, and with every mile the noise in my head quieted a little more. When I finally turned into the long gravel driveway of Villa Ava, I had to stop the car halfway up just to take it in. The house looked exactly like it had in the pictures, but somehow more alive. Cream-colored stone walls covered in half-sleeping vines, weathered shutters painted a deep sage, and beyond them rows of vines stretching into the horizon. The afternoon sun caught on the brass knocker as if greeting me home. Camille Dupont, my event planner, was already there, waving from the front steps with a clipboard in hand. Bienvenue, Madame Reynolds. Everything is ready, I laughed. You might be the first person who's ever called me Madame without it sounding sarcastic. She led me through the villa, the scent of lemon oil and fresh linen lingering in the halls. The living room opened into a kitchen straight from a dream. Rustic beams, copper pots hanging over a massive wooden table, sunlight pouring across terracotta floors. Guest rooms prepared? I asked, checking her list over her shoulder. Oui, 5 bedrooms inside, 2 in the cottage. Fresh flowers in each, she smiled proudly. And the vineyard? Perfect for a sunset dinner. Outside, the light softened into late afternoon gold. I walked through the vineyard rows, fingers brushing the dry vines. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel heavy, it felt earned. My phone buzzed, a message from Sienna. Plane tickets booked, landing in Marseille Wednesday morning. Then one from Aunt Elaine. We're coming, my dear, and I'm bringing pie recipes and family gossip. I smiled at the screen, heart steady, grounded. This wasn't running away. This was arrival. As I stood in the courtyard, the wind shifted, carrying a faint melody from the nearby village bells, laughter, life. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't chasing approval. I was home, even half a world away, and I hadn't even started setting the table yet. The following morning, the sound of gravel crunching outside the villa pulled me from sleep. I glanced at the clock, 8:14 a.m. My first guests had arrived early. I threw on a sweater and stepped onto the terrace, just as a silver rental van turned the corner. When the doors slid open, I saw Aunt Elaine, first elegant as ever, in her oversized sunglasses and travel scarf. Behind her, Noah and Sienna wrestled with luggage, arguing about who forgot the snacks at the airport. "Noah," I called out, laughing, "don't tell me you came all the way from Chicago just to start another sibling war." He grinned. "Please, we needed a new venue for it." Elaine crossed the courtyard, her heels clicking on the stones, and wrapped me in a hug that smelled faintly of lavender and jet fuel. "My dear Ava," she murmured, "you've outdone yourself. I can't believe this place is real." I smiled against her shoulder. Neither can I, honestly. Inside, I led them through the villa. Noah kept filming everything on his phone, for future blackmail, he claimed, while Sienna paused every few steps, tracing the old stone walls with her fingertips. "You know," she said softly, "this doesn't just look like a new chapter, it feels like one." In the kitchen, I poured us coffee while Elaine reviewed Camille's itinerary. "I've been hosting family dinners for 40 years, she said, adjusting her glasses. "But this one? This feels different, like we're finally choosing where we belong." The words hit me harder than I expected. I nodded, unable to hide the small smile tugging at my lips. As the sun climbed over the vineyard, laughter began to fill the villa's empty corners. For the first time in years, family didn't sound like obligation, it sounded like home. By late afternoon, the villa had come alive. Noah was playing guitar on the terrace. Sienna was rearranging candles on the dining table, and Aunt Elaine had disappeared into the garden with a glass of rosé, muttering something about therapeutic sunlight. I stood by the kitchen counter, reviewing Camille's checklist when my phone buzzed, an Austin area code. "Ethan." "Hey," I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I polished a wine glass. "You made it through Monday?" He exhaled. "Barely. Listen, Ava, Lila's been crying since last night." The glass froze in my hand. "Crying?" "Your video's everywhere now. Friends sent it to her, to your parents. They're not taking it well." I swallowed a sigh. "Ethan, I didn't name anyone. It's a travel video with good lighting and one mildly pointed caption." "I know," he said gently, "but you know how your mom is, and Lila feels caught in the middle." "Caught?" I repeated, voice flat. "She's been comfortably centered her entire life." Before he could reply, another call flashed across the screen. Lila. I hung up on Ethan and picked up hers. Her voice hit before the hello. "What the hell, Ava? You embarrassed Mom." "She hasn't slept. Do you even care how this makes us look?" "Us?" I said quietly. "You mean how it makes you look since you're the one sitting at their golden table this year?" "That's not fair." Her tone cracked, sharp and defensive. "You're twisting this into some dramatic martyr thing. Mom was just trying to make things peaceful." "Peaceful," I repeated, tasting the word. "Lila. She publicly excluded me. That wasn't peace, that was convenience." She huffed. "You've always been so dramatic, Ava. You act like being successful gives you the right to humiliate everyone who didn't choose your path." I bit down the instinct to laugh. "Humiliate? I bought a house? I cooked my own meal? That's not humiliation, it's adulthood." There was a long silence, the kind where words hung heavy between sisters who'd run out of ways to pretend. Then she whispered, almost childlike, "You could have called me before posting it. And you could have called me before celebrating a Thanksgiving I wasn't invited to," I said softly. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Outside, the wind brushed through the olive trees, filling the silence for us. Finally, she said, "Mom's hurting. Don't make it worse." "I'm not the one who started this," I replied, voice calm, almost too calm. "But I'm done being quiet just to make everyone else comfortable." I hung up before she could answer, my reflection catching in the kitchen window, steady, still, unshaken. Noah's laughter drifted in from the terrace, the sound of normal life continuing without permission. I poured myself a small glass of wine and whispered to the empty room, "Peace, right? Let's see how that feels when it's mine." The next morning, the air smelled of espresso and rain. I was sitting on the terrace, laptop open, answering work emails I barely cared about when my phone buzzed again. Ethan. I hesitated. After last night's argument with Lila, I wasn't sure I had the energy for another family conversation. Still, something in me said to pick up. "Hey," I said cautiously. He sounded tired. "Ava, before you hang up, just hear me out." "I'm listening," I said, closing the laptop. "She's sorry," he began, and I could tell from his tone that Lila wasn't the one who'd planned this call. Not ready to say it out loud, but she knows she went too far. She's embarrassed. I let the word sit there. Embarrassed because she hurt me, or embarrassed because people saw it? He exhaled. Probably both. "But here's the thing, we've been talking, and we'd like to come." I blinked. "Come?" "To France, for Thanksgiving." The words hung between us like fog. I stared at the vineyard spreading beyond the terrace, every row perfectly aligned, disciplined, unlike us. "You realize what that means, right?" I asked slowly. "It won't be like home. There won't be anyone to play referee." "That's kind of the point," Ethan said. "We need a reset, for everyone." I could hear kids laughing faintly in the background, Emma and Josh, my niece and nephew. Their voices made something ache in my chest. They were innocent in all of this. "Does she really want to come?" I asked. "Or do you want her to?" "She said you probably wouldn't say yes," he replied quietly. "But I think you will, because under all that calm, you still care." I looked down at my coffee, cold now, the crema cracked like a thin line of hesitation. He wasn't wrong. "All right," I said finally. "You can come. But Ethan..." "Yeah? This time it's different. I need Lila to understand that this is my space, my rules, my peace. I'm not rebuilding what broke us just to have it collapse again." "I understand," he said. "And Ava, thank you." When the call ended, I stayed there a while, listening to the sound of church bells drifting from the village below. The morning sun had broken through the clouds, painting the villa in light that felt both new and forgiving. I didn't know if I'd made the right choice, but for the first time, it wasn't about right or wrong. It was about courage. I picked up my phone, texted Camille. "Add 2 adults and 2 kids to the guest list. We're making room for history." Then I put the phone face down and whispered to the empty terrace, "Let's see if old wounds can survive new air." The morning of Thanksgiving broke over Provence like a promise crisp air, soft light, and the faint smell of rosemary drifting from the garden. I woke before anyone else, the quiet of the villa stretching around me like a held breath. Today was supposed to be peaceful. It was supposed to be mine. By the time the others started stirring, I'd already laid out ingredients across the kitchen island, fresh herbs from the market, truffle butter, loaves of crusty French bread, and the turkey Camille had sourced from a local farm. The copper pots gleamed. The coffee brewed. For once, everything felt under control. Then I heard the car. The crunch of gravel outside snapped through the calm. I didn't have to look. I knew it was Lila. Her voice echoed before the door even closed. "Ava, wow. You weren't kidding about the villa." I turned slowly, wiping my hands on a towel. She stood in the doorway, travel-tired but still radiating that unshakable confidence she'd inherited from our mother. Behind her, Ethan carried suitcases while Emma and Josh ran past him, squealing at the sight of the vineyard. "Welcome to France," I said. "Jet-lagged or ready to cook?" Lila gave a small laugh, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's just say the flight wasn't peaceful. Mom's been calling non-stop." I ignored that. "Well, we've got a lot to do. Dinner for 15. She nodded, glancing around. "You're actually doing all this yourself?" "With help," I said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "No staff today, just family." Her lips twitched. "Bold move." Within an hour, the villa was humming again. Noah chopping vegetables, Sienna arranging flowers, Elaine commanding the dessert table like a general. Lila slipped into the kitchen, uninvited but somehow already holding a spoon. "You're not seasoning that right," she said, frowning at the turkey. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? Mom always adds sage before roasting. Otherwise, it's bland." "Well, Mom's not here," I said lightly, but she was already reaching for the herbs. I caught her wrist midair. "Lila, stop." The room went still. Even the kids went quiet. Her eyes flashed hurt first, then defiance. "I'm just trying to help." "No," I said, calm but firm. "You're trying to control." "There's a difference." For a moment, neither of us moved. It wasn't about the turkey. It never was. This was every conversation we'd never finished, every unspoken hierarchy we'd silently upheld. Lila set the spoon down with a metallic clink. "You've really changed, haven't you?" "Yeah," I said. "I had to." Her gaze darted toward Aunt Elaine, who was pretending to rearrange plates, but clearly listening. "You know, Mom's right about one thing," Lila said. "You always make everything about you." That one landed like a punch, but I didn't flinch. "And you always make sure I feel small for it. Because you act like you're better than everyone. Because I stopped apologizing for existing," I cut in. The silence that followed was thick, electric. Even the simmering broth on the stove seemed to wait. Then Ethan stepped in from the hallway, sensing the tension. "Hey, why don't we all take a breather?" I didn't look away from her. "I'm fine." "So am I," she said, but her voice cracked just enough to betray her. Aunt Elaine finally intervened, voice soft but steady. "Girls," she said, "this kitchen has enough heat without you two adding more." The faintest laugh escaped me, breaking the tension. I turned back to the counter. "Lila, if you really want to help, there's dough that needs kneading." She hesitated, then moved closer. "Fine, but I'm still adding sage later." I smiled without looking up. "We'll see." For the next hour, the kitchen found a fragile rhythm, Lila kneading dough beside me, Elaine humming as she whisked cream, Noah sneaking spoonfuls of mashed potatoes when he thought I wasn't watching. Slowly, laughter crept back in through the cracks. When Lila brushed flour from her hands, she said quietly, "You know, Mom's never going to forgive you for that video." "Maybe not," I said, meeting her eyes. "But that's her story, not mine." She studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind her guarded expression. "This place, it's beautiful," she admitted. "I didn't expect to like it." "Most people don't expect peace to feel this loud," I replied. Outside, the bells from the village chimed noon. The table was almost ready. Lila looked around the golden light, the smell of bread rising, the sound of kids laughing in the vineyard, and for once, she didn't have a comeback. Instead, she said softly, "Maybe we both needed a new tradition." I nodded. Maybe we did. And for the first time in years, standing side by side over a roasting turkey in a sunlit kitchen, my sister and I weren't rivals, we were just two women trying to learn how to belong again. While Provence woke to the smell of fresh bread and sunlight, Austin, Texas woke to chaos. In the Reynolds' suburban kitchen, Margaret paced barefoot on the tile floor, phone in hand, robe half-tied, her voice cracking with disbelief. "She's not answering, Mark." None of them are answering. Her husband looked up from his untouched coffee, brow furrowed behind his reading glasses. "Maybe they're sightseeing," he muttered. "Europeans eat late." "It's Thanksgiving," she snapped. "You think they're sightseeing?" She turned the phone toward him, showing a glowing Instagram post. A panoramic shot of Villa Ava, candles flickering across a long table set for 15, captioned, "New table, new rules." Mark squinted. Is that Lila?" Margaret's face went pale. "Oh my God, it is!" She zoomed in. There was Lila, standing beside Ava, laughing, a wine glass in hand. The caption tag confirmed it. "At Lila Reynolds." Her voice broke into a whisper that barely held back fury. She took my family to France. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed too loud. Mark finally spoke, measured, cautious. Maybe this isn't about you, Margaret. She spun on him. Not about me? She embarrassed this family. She's turned our private matters into a... She gestured helplessly at the phone. A viral spectacle. He exhaled through his nose, the sound of 30 years of quiet compromise. She didn't name us. You're the one who sent that message in the family chat, remember? Margaret froze. For a split second, guilt flickered in her eyes, but it vanished just as quickly. It was meant to protect peace. She twisted it. Maybe, he said, standing now, setting his cup in the sink. Or maybe she just finally stopped playing by your rules. The words hung in the air, uncharacteristically sharp for him. She stared at him as though seeing him for the first time. You're taking her side? I'm not taking sides, he said quietly. I'm just tired of pretending she's the problem. The phone buzzed again. A text from Margaret's bridge friend, Carolyn. Just saw the video, France. Looks beautiful. You must be so proud of Ava. Margaret's jaw clenched. Pride was the last thing she felt. She's making a fool of us, she murmured. What will people think? Mark met her gaze. Maybe they'll think we raised a daughter who built her own life? She didn't answer. Instead, she sank into a kitchen chair, scrolling through the flood of comments under Ava's post-heart emojis, praise, admiration. Each one seemed to chip away at the version of family she'd tried so hard to curate. When the phone rang again, Ava's name flashing across the screen, Margaret didn't pick up. Her hand trembled, torn between anger and something much harder to face, shame. Outside, the Texas sun glared through the blinds, too bright for comfort. For the first time, Margaret Reynolds realized she wasn't the one holding the narrative anymore. Ava was. The night in Provence was electric. Candles flickered along the long farmhouse table, glinting off half-empty glasses of wine. The vineyard outside glowed faintly under strings of golden lights that Camille had wrapped between the olive trees. The scent of roasted turkey and thyme hung thick in the air, and for the first time in years, laughter came easily to everyone. Even Lila was laughing. She was sitting across from me, cheeks pink from wine, telling a story about Josh trying to convince his French seatmate that macarons were just colorful hamburgers. Even Aunt Elaine snorted into her drink. For a moment, I let myself enjoy it. The sound, the warmth, the impossible feeling that maybe things had finally shifted. Then my phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made my stomach twist. Mom. I wasn't going to answer. I'd promised myself that tonight nothing would pull me back into their noise. But then I saw the look on Lila's face. She'd noticed the name too, and she was pale. She'll just keep calling, she whispered. I sighed, nodded once, and hit speaker. Hi, Mom. There was a pause, long enough for everyone at the table to exchange glances. Then Margaret Reynolds' voice came through, brittle and tight. Ava, so this is what you've been doing. Her tone wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in a mother's disappointment. I kept my voice level. Enjoying Thanksgiving, yes? With our family? She snapped. In France? While we sit here in Texas wondering why our phones won't stop ringing from people asking if our daughters are... She broke off, her breath catching. Showboating our dirty laundry online? Aunt Elaine leaned back, quietly folding her arms. Noah mouthed, keep your cool. I took a slow breath. Mom, no one's talking about laundry. It's dinner. It's family. Something you told me not to come home for. That message was taken out of context. She shot back immediately. You know what we meant. Things have been stressful, and your sister needed a peaceful environment. Which apparently didn't include me. Mark's voice came faintly through the line now, lower, calmer. Ava, sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been the strong one. We just thought... That I didn't need to be included? I interrupted before he could soften it into reason. Dad, do you know how that sounds? I know, he said quietly. But your mother... My mother, I said, my voice shaking now despite myself, spent 30 years convincing me that my strength made me less deserving of care. The table was dead silent. Even the children stopped whispering. Margaret's voice wavered. Don't you dare say I didn't love you. I didn't say that, I replied. I said you didn't see me. There it was, the truth that had waited decades to be spoken, hovering between us like smoke. Lila pressed her palms together, her face unreadable. Mom, she said gently, please just listen. Margaret's tone sharpened. Lila, don't get involved. You already hurt me enough by going behind my back. Lila blinked. By attending Thanksgiving with my sister? Yes. That single word cracked through the speaker so loud it made Emma flinch. Mark tried to interject. Margaret? But she wasn't finished. Do you have any idea what people are saying? They think we disowned her. They think I'm some kind of monster who... You told me to skip Thanksgiving, I said, my voice rising now, the calm slipping despite every effort. You told me you wanted peace. I gave you exactly what you asked for. You didn't have to turn it into a spectacle, she shot back. Mom, you made it public first, I countered. You posted that message in the family group chat. You told 20 relatives that I wasn't invited, and somehow I'm the one embarrassing you. The silence after that felt like a blade. I could hear her breathing, ragged, angry, but under it, there was something else, too. Fear. Mark finally spoke, weary. Ava, maybe we should talk privately. This doesn't have to be... No, Elaine said softly, leaning toward my phone. It's time it is. Everyone turned to her. My mother's voice hardened. Elaine, I would appreciate if you stayed out of this. Oh, I'm sure you would, Elaine said coolly, but someone needs to hold up a mirror. You've spent years dividing these girls into roles, Lila the delicate one, Ava the strong one, and neither of them ever got to just be. This dinner isn't about defiance, it's about freedom. Lila swallowed hard. She's right, Mom. Don't start with me, Margaret snapped. No, Lila said, her voice breaking. I have to. You always said Ava was too much. You made me feel like I had to be the fragile one just so you'd love me differently, and I let it happen because it was easier than standing next to her strength. The look on my mother's face, shock, then shame, was visible even through the silence of a phone line. I could hear her exhale, shaky and uneven. You think I wanted this? You think any of this was easy? I closed my eyes. No, Mom, I think it was comfortable. No one spoke. The weight of decades pressed down on all of us, spread across thousands of miles and a single phone connection. Finally, Mark cleared his throat. Ava, he said quietly, what do you want from us? The question caught me off guard. For once, it wasn't defensive, it was sincere. I took a deep breath. I want you to stop rewriting the story to make it easier to live with. You don't have to apologize for everything, but you do have to see me as your daughter, not your fallback plan. I've spent my whole life earning a seat at your table. I just decided to build my own. The line went quiet again. In Texas, I could imagine my mother staring at the phone, realizing for the first time that I meant it. Then she said something I didn't expect. You built something beautiful, Ava. It wasn't a surrender, but it wasn't denial either. Thank you, I whispered. Lila reached for my hand across the table. Her fingers were trembling, but she held on. I don't know how to fix this, Mom continued, her voice softening. But maybe next year, we could come. If you'll have us. I met Lila's eyes, then Elaine's, then glanced at the faces around the table family, chosen and earned. You're welcome, I said, but next year you come as guests, not hosts. That drew a small laugh from Noah, easing the tension just enough. Before my mother could respond, Emma piped up from the end of the table. "Grandma's in the phone?" I smiled faintly. "She is." Emma leaned toward the speaker. "Grandma, Aunt Ava's house is way better than yours." The entire table erupted in laughter. Even through the static, I swore I heard my mother chuckle. We ended the call a few minutes later, not fixed, not healed, but finally honest. Afterward, I stepped outside. The vineyard shimmered under the moonlight, rows of silver and shadow. The night air carried traces of thyme and wood smoke, and in the distance, church bells tolled softly from the village. Lila followed me out. I didn't think she'd say yes. Neither did I. She crossed her arms, smiling. "You know, you were kind of terrifying in there." "I've been rehearsing for 30 years, I said with a smirk. For a while, we stood in silence, watching the flicker of candles through the window, the reflection of a family not perfect but trying. Then Lila said quietly, "I think Mom's scared." "Not of you, of losing the story she's told herself all these years." I nodded. "Maybe it's time we start telling our own." A breeze moved through the vines, soft and steady. I let it wash over me. For the first time, my heart didn't ache when I thought of home. It expanded. Inside, I could hear Noah starting another toast, Elaine scolding him for pouring too much wine, the kids giggling. I turned to Lila, smiling. "Come on, let's not miss dessert. You know how Mom hates when we let the pie get cold." She laughed, rolling her eyes. "Old habits die hard." "Yeah," I said, opening the door, "but new ones can live beautifully." As we stepped back into the warm light of Villa Ava, I realized that some reckonings aren't meant to destroy. Some are meant to rebuild louder, freer, and finally, together. The morning after the call, the villa was quieter than usual. The laughter and music from last night had faded into a still, thoughtful calm. Sunlight spilled across the stone floor of the kitchen, catching the last traces of flour from where Lila and I had baked pie hours earlier. I found her there, barefoot, sitting on the counter with a mug of coffee between her hands. She looked nothing like the sister I'd grown up competing with. No sharp edges, no forced poise. Just tired. Human. "You're up early," I said softly. She gave a small laugh. "Jet lag and guilt. A powerful combo." I leaned against the counter opposite her, waiting. Lila never started conversations like this unless something was shifting inside her. She stared into her mug. "Last night, after Mom hung up, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The call, her voice. The look on your face." She paused. "It hit me. I've spent my whole life standing next to her, trying to be the version of me that made her comfortable." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "She'd compare us, and I'd let her," she continued. "Because it felt easier to be the one who needed saving than the one who was resented for not needing anything." Her voice cracked then. "But I see it now. That wasn't love, it was dependency. And I let her make you the villain for not carrying all of us." I felt something tighten in my chest. "Lila," she shook her head quickly. "No, let me finish. You were right to walk away. You did what I was too scared to do. And when you posted that video, I thought it was cruel, but now I get it." Her eyes lifted to meet mine, steady, tear-bright, and real. "You weren't being cruel. You were setting yourself free, and maybe giving the rest of us a map." For the first time, I didn't see my little sister as fragile. I saw a woman standing in the middle of her own reckoning. She slid off the counter and took a deep breath. "I called Mom this morning," she said. "Told her she's coming next year, but not to take over. I told her it's Ava's Thanksgiving now." I blinked. "You said that?" She smiled faintly. "Yeah, and she didn't yell, she just went quiet, then said, 'Maybe it's time someone else led.'" The words landed between us like sunlight warming cold ground. I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. For a second, she tensed old habits, but then she relaxed, pressing her forehead to my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She laughed through her tears. You sound like Mom." "God forbid," I said, and we both cracked up, laughter breaking the heaviness. Outside, the bells of Saint-Cyr Church chimed in the distance. The day felt lighter. And for the first time in our lives, my sister and I stood on the same side not of our parents' expectations, but of our own becoming. The morning after Thanksgiving dawned with soft mist rolling over the vineyard. The golden light of Provence filtered through the kitchen windows, turning the leftover wine glasses into tiny prisms of color. The house was quiet, too quiet after last night's storm of truth. I stood by the sink, cradling a mug of coffee, replaying every word from the phone call with my parents. Even after sleeping on it, the ache hadn't softened. My hands were steady, but my chest felt like someone had tied a string around it and kept pulling. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Lila appeared, still in her robe, holding her phone like it was a live grenade. "You're up early," I said, half smiling. "So are you," she replied, hesitating before setting the phone on the counter. "They called again." I froze. "Mom and Dad?" She nodded. "They want to talk. Both of them. Together." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to ignore it to stay in this quiet French morning where the only expectations were my own. But another part, the daughter part, couldn't help wondering if maybe this was finally different. "Did you answer?" I asked. Lila shook her head. "I figured it should be you." She paused, studying me. "But they sounded softer. Not like before." The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the marble. "Mom and Dad," the screen read. I took a long breath and answered. "Hi," Mark spoke first. "Morning, sweetheart. We didn't wake you, did we?" "No," I said, cautious. "We've been up," Margaret's voice followed, quieter than usual. "Ava, I wanted to thank you for answering last night." The silence that followed was fragile. I didn't rush to fill it. "We've been talking," she continued, "your father and I, about how things became what they are. I don't think we realized how much we leaned on you to hold everything together, or how much it cost you." I blinked, unsure how to respond. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was the closest she'd ever come. Mark cleared his throat. "We're sorry, Ava. Truly. You deserved better from us." For a second, all I could do was stare out the window at the vineyard, the fog lifting in slow waves. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to trust that this wasn't just guilt talking. "Thank you," I said finally. "That means more than you know." Then, softer, my mother's voice again. "Lila told us you invited us for next year." "Is that still true?" I met Lila's eyes across the counter. She gave me a small nod, the kind that said, "It's okay, you can say yes." "It is," I said. "But it has to be different. No more competition, no more pretending. If you come here, you come as guests, not judges." Margaret exhaled shakily. "I think—" "I'd like that." "Me too," Mark added. "And Ava, I'm proud of you. We both are." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I laughed, a small, incredulous sound. "Thanks, Dad." When the call ended, I set the phone down, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Lila poured herself coffee, bumping my shoulder gently. "Look at you," she said, smiling. Who knew a little villa in France could fix 30 years of family therapy? "Not fix," I corrected, smiling back. "Just reframe." We stood there for a long moment, two sisters watching the morning light spill over new beginnings. And somewhere across an ocean, I hoped our parents were doing the same. The next morning, Provence felt like a painting finally finished. The air was cool, sweet with lavender and wood smoke. The vines shimmered gold beneath the late autumn sun. Inside Villa Ava, every window was open, letting in light and laughter. It had been a week since the call with our parents. They hadn't come to France, but they'd called again this time, just to talk. No rehearsed apologies, no guilt, just small things. Mom asking for the pumpkin tart recipe, Dad asking how the weather was. Normal. And somehow, that felt revolutionary. The villa had changed too, not in structure, but in soul. The long farmhouse table at the center of it all, the one I'd had built from reclaimed oak, was now covered in half-finished breakfast plates, sketchbooks, and crayons. Emma and Noah Jr. were arguing over who could draw the better grapevine, while Aunt Elaine tried to teach Lila how to make proper French coffee. "Not too much pressure," Elaine said, watching the espresso pour. "You're not interrogating the beans." Lila rolled her eyes, laughing. "I'm new at being relaxed, okay?" I sat by the window, camera in hand, filming short clips for the new project I'd quietly started, a documentary series called The Table I Built. It wasn't about furniture. It was about reclaiming space, physical, emotional, generational. In the shot, the table looked alive, not perfect, not polished, but full. "Mom, are you filming again?" Emma asked, hopping onto a chair beside me. "Maybe," I said with a smile. "It's for future Thanksgivings." She squinted at the camera. "Is Grandma gonna be in it too next time?" I paused, then nodded. "If she wants to be." "Good," she said, satisfied, "because I want to teach her how to paint grapes." That was the moment I realized the cycle had finally shifted, not with some grand apology or cinematic ending, but with small hands painting over old wounds in brighter colors. Later that afternoon, as everyone napped or wandered the vineyard, I carried a pot of coffee outside and sat at the head of the table. The same spot my mother used to sit in every holiday. For the first time, it didn't feel like hers anymore. It didn't even feel like mine. It just belonged to whoever showed up with love and honesty. Lila joined me after a while, barefoot, her hair tied up in a messy knot. "You ever think about what next year'll look like?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said, "but I'm not trying to predict it anymore." She nodded, leaning back in her chair. "Mom texted me this morning, said she's been talking to a therapist." I blinked. "Really?" "Yeah, said it's time she learns to listen before she loses us completely." For a moment, the world went still. The hum of bees, the whisper of leaves, everything softened. "She's trying," I said quietly. "So are we," Lila replied. We sat there in silence, watching the light shift over the vineyard, until the sound of children's laughter drifted from inside. The smell of warm bread followed. Lila stood first. "Come on, big sister, the table's waiting." I laughed. "It always is." We went inside together, the air alive with warmth, clinking dishes, and half-finished conversations. The villa was no longer just a symbol of defiance. It was a home built from boundaries and forgiveness, from letting go of who we were told to be, and finally becoming who we are. As I filmed the final clip for the day, I whispered softly into the camera, "This table wasn't built to replace anyone. It was built to remind me that love doesn't have to come from where it was lost. Sometimes it's rebuilt from the same wood, just shaped differently." And then I hit save. I used to think strength meant distance walking away before I could be hurt again. But I've learned that real strength isn't about walls, it's about doors. Doors you choose when to open and when to close for your own peace. This villa, this table, this family, they aren't perfect. We still carry old habits and echoes of past conversations that sting. But now we meet them with honesty instead of silence. We speak, even when it shakes our voices. And that's progress. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's that healing doesn't erase the past. It reframes it. We can't rewrite where we came from, but we can decide what comes next. So, to anyone listening, build your own table. Invite who deserves a seat, not who demands one. Create peace that doesn't depend on permission, because family isn't always inherited, it's chosen, crafted, and earned. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is building a life so grounded in love that even those who doubted you have no choice but to see it shine. If my story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder. You can rebuild too. And when you do, make it beautiful.